everyone. Welcome to Continental Aspire Soccer TV. With me here this morning, as you can see, is Antony Thompson, ex Royal Marine. Anthony, welcome to the podcast.
Absolute pleasure to be here, Nick. Thank you very much for having me on. It's something I've been looking forward to for some time. So glad that we've finally been able to link it up and actually make it happen.
Yep, no, absolutely, man. I know we met through. I think it was Stuart Gander. He used to. I know he did some stuff with Arsenal, and he's done some stuff with Cardiff City and things like that. But obviously, that's kind of how we met, I believe, originally. You know how it works in the business world, and football world. It's like how people network and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anthony, give us a little bit of your background. Just for a lot of our listeners and stuff. What's kind of take us back to, if I met you and we were in primary school together or high school, who's Antony Thompson? Bring us all the way back.
So some time ago. But no, I grew up in the lowly suburbs of Norwich, over in East Anglia. Had a really regular upbringing, if I'm honest. Well, I didn't have a father, never knew my father, but my mother was always at work and working for the family and stuff like that. So I'm an only child. Primary school was good. Put a lot of hard work in. It was only when I got to secondary school did the wheels start to come off a little bit. Kind of lost my focus, but that was in time with me actually quitting my swimming career. I started swimming at about age 5, and then by the time I was probably about 14, 15, I quit because the coach tried to get the best out of me, but in the way in which his delivery was, I kind of just thought, no, this is not going to work out for me. I didn't really have a sense of purpose, and I didn't really understand why I was doing what I was doing. So I just thought, I'm going to quit, and that kind of transcended into my school as well. I kind of quit at school, kind of quit at life a little bit. I was a bit fed up, and I put all this hard work in to achieve nothing. I was obviously feeling a little bitter about that. So 14, 15, wheels really started to come off, and kind of went downhill massively from there. Started mixing with the wrong people. By the time I age 16, I had no GCSE. Well, I had one GCSE C in GCSE, so nothing to write home about. And as opposed, instead of maybe furthering my academic life, I kind of left school at 16 thinking that I knew it all. And I went into the big bad world of work, 16 years old, started doing your average line of jobs, which you go into when you're 16-year-old, as a waiter and stuff like that, and at your local pub, and kind of worked my way up in the hospitality sector, only very briefly, for a very brief period. But the frustrating thing back then was that I managed to acquire a gambling addiction, which didn't play out too well for me. And I started to owe a lot of people money, because obviously you don't earn in loads of money, but I'm spending a lot of money. So I started to owe a lot of people a lot of money. People started to not believe in me anymore. My family, my friends told me that I was going to be a nobody and nothing. Where are you going to go? And by age 19, this was at a point where I had to move out to Spain, because that was my only option, where my mother had moved to. I'd lost my license. I was being a bit of a reprobate, unnecessary. I didn't speak the language. I didn't have any academic qualifications. I hadn't really done or achieved anything with my life of great magnitude by age 19. And I was kind of reflecting upon that in Spain. When you got time in isolation, funny old thing, that's what we've got a lot of time now. But when you've got a big period of isolation, you then sort of inwardly look, so go through a period of introspection and say, is this what I'm all about? So at age 19, I realised that my only job really was to become a fruit picker in the local fruit picking facility. And really, has my life come to this? Have I put all this hard work in so far to have this as my major aspiration for life? So I went back for a brief period back to the UK, and I started speaking with my best friend, who said, I'm thinking about going to the military. I'd never really considered it necessarily as a genuine thing to do. But the more we started speaking about it, I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea. So we both went to the Armed Forces Careers Office. He went in to become a Royal Navy diving mine clearance diver. And I kind of stepped in thinking that I was going to do the same. But it just so happened that there's a Royal Marines corporal, because there's not always Royal Marines people in AFCOs anymore, but there was a Royal Marines corporal sat behind the desk, like a massive geezer. And he's like, all right, you look pretty big. Do you reckon you could do 5 pull-ups? Oh, no, he said, no, do you reckon you fancy going in the Royal Marines? I was like, yeah, I wouldn't mind giving it a go, yeah. A bit uncertain, 19 years old, not really sure about myself too much. But he then said, all right, do you reckon you could do 5 pull-ups? I was like, yeah, I could do 5 pull-ups. Just bang out 5 pull-ups. And he was like, right, there you go. There's your instructions. Go home, fill those in, think about it over the next few days, and bring it back to me. And that really sort of set my life into motion. If I was in this kind of period after I quit swimming, because I was very, very serious about that. I was doing sort of eight sessions a week, AM and PM sessions. I had aspirations to go to the Olympics because butterfly was my stroke back then. And this was the only time that I'd really sort of gone, I can get my teeth stuck into this again. I really want to go after this again. It was something that I want to do. And I went away, and I was really, not in any sort of shape to join the Royal Marines at all. But I just had that will, want to try and change. That inspiration to change was my fear of becoming nothing. When you look at your life and you're like, oh, what if these people are right? What if I do become nothing? Then perhaps I need to change. So it kind of acted as that catalyst for me, really, really wanted to change. So I started doing the training. I passed the medical, passed the pre-joint fitness test, passed the PRMC, found myself in training in the cold January of 2008. And bizarrely, my friend joined basic training in the Royal Navy the day before, literally. So it was really, really close.
Okay.
He went in the day before, I went in the day after. And I unfortunately, all the way in, training is tough. There's just no two ways about it. But the fever about week 21, which was before a major physical test, which you have to conduct on the bottom field. The bottom field is kind of the assault course, where the culmination of all of those ends in a 30-foot shimmy up to the top of a rope and then back down, and then you have to go across the tank, as it's known, to do a regain, where you basically off the rope, hang low, and then you have to reposition yourself back on the rope and cross the rope for I think it's about 40 feet across the open tank. And it was a really, really hard physical test to do. And as I was doing it, I just passed out on the bottom field. Had a temperature of about 41 degrees and kind of woke up in hospital with all these IV drips in me, going, what the hell was that all about? And basically I caught fever week 1. And I've never been so written off in my life. It was that was it for me for a good few months. And I remember people speaking to me about it, and they were saying, "Oh well, you've done as well as you can do. It doesn't matter if you don't go back. Don't worry about it." And I was like, "No way. I'm not going to let this beat me. This is a challenge which I need to overcome for me." Because the only person doing it for at the time was myself, to not become who I didn't want to be. And I got over it in 3 months' time. I forced the sergeant to get me in a troop if I passed a certain physical test. I had to go and do the physical test to get myself out of what's called hunter troop. So it's like when you get back troop, when you get troop when you get injured, you go into this holding troop, basically, where you do rehabilitation, etc. And you have to fight your way out of it, basically, to get you back into a troop. And I'd sort of targeted a troop, which I put a number, and I was like, I'm going in that troop. And the sergeant was like, nah, there's no way. You're not fit enough. You've been away for 3 months. How do you expect to get into that troop, in the next 2 weeks? I was like, Sergeant, just trust me, let me. So I went to work. Worked really hard, passed the bottom field test. And he was like, I don't know how you've done this, Recruit Thompson, but you've managed to pass it, get yourself back in a troop, and now off, basically.
Right, okay.
I finished training in December, and immediately sent to a unit where I was put up for a battle casualty replacement and was sent out to Afghan 2009. Battle casualty replacement, for the people that don't know, is basically you replace someone who's injured on the front line. And unfortunately, the person that I was replacing was Lance Corporal Ben Watley, who was killed on Christmas Day of 2000. Right. So really, I was going into a battle-hardened section, and that was a really interesting dynamic to go into. And then I finished Afghan. After that, went out there for a few months, finished Afghan, did a little bit of other things around the Corps, went back to Afghanistan for the second time, but in between that, I'd had a little bit of Libya, a little bit of Somalia, went around the Gulf of Aden. And yeah, after my second tour of Afghan, I got an opportunity to go into the officers batch. Basically, you get something I really want to do. I was either going to go special forces or I was going to go and become an officer. And there's two ways in which you can become an officer. One of them is going out and doing an 8-week course once you become a corporal. It's like a transition course, or you go back into training for 64 weeks to do it all again to become a lieutenant, where you now head up a troop in a fighting company, in a unit. And that was something that I really, really wanted to do. So I went back into training with the full knowledge that if I got injured past a certain point, there was no return for me. Not expecting really to get injured, but 3 courses to training, I did get injured. It was a life-changing injury, although I didn't know it at the time. I was back in rehab again, and it's a bit disappointing because I'd already been there in training once, and now I'm back in training and I've got injured again, and I'm back in rehab, and it was a really difficult time. And I literally spent 2 years in rehab, trying to get myself better, but also trying to keep busy, working and coaching and mentoring a number of different recruits that were also injured, just taking my experience to say, look, I've already been out to war. This is what it's like. This is what it's worth. Trying to reinforce their inspiration for why they want to continue in their training. Anyway, I managed to never recover, or didn't manage to recover, sorry. And left the Marines 2017, went out to work in London as a management consultant.
Okay.
At the time, I met Ben, who's now my business partner, and we've worked with some pretty cool businesses in our coaching and consulting business, and some sports teams and sports individuals. And yeah, now it kind of brings me up to this point where I'm humbled.
Current day, yeah, okay. So see. One of the things I did want to say, Anthony, so whenever you kind of were going through kind of from where you grew up in Norwich, and kind of that dynamic, that part of your life, literally from being because obviously you were quite athletic, obviously you're obviously in swimming, and anybody that does swimming knows how challenging that is. It's a very challenging form of cardio exercise. And so what would you say when what was the issue you had with your coach, would you say, that stopped you from, I suppose, going to that next level? What would you say it was in your relationship with him, or where you were mentally at that point?
So for me, it was kind of identifying with, why am I doing this 8 times a week?
Right.
I lost touch with what the goal was, and I never had that opportunity to speak with a coach. Maybe I was naive to it then, but 13, 14 years old, you don't necessarily know what questions to ask. You kind of just, certainly I never having a father figure. Having a father. I did have a father figure, my grandfather, but, having a father to bat ideas off, or, what's this all about? Who do I need to go and speak to? What it's all about? I never had that open dialogue necessarily with anyone. So I was kind of just consistently looking inside for all the answers, and sometimes they're not always there. Sometimes they are, but not always. And all I was receiving from my coach was, "You're not good enough." He was a very hard line coach. "You're not good enough. You need to work harder. You need to go here." And and it was all about what I needed to do, less than why I was doing it, if that makes sense. So
absolutely, yeah.
I think that is a massive fundamental. When any coach, they need to understand who they're working with. And maybe I wasn't top priority. Maybe there were other people, because there were other people that were better than me, but I was in a very high performing club, and kind of maybe if I would have had a different relationship, or the coach was of a different sort, maybe I would have continued. But at that time, I needed a different type of coaching. I needed a different style of coaching. And that would have worked probably a couple of years before. But that weird time when you're going through a number of different changes in your life, perhaps always being told that you're not good enough is not necessarily the answer that you need to be able able to develop into the next stage.
Do you not think, though, in terms of when you were getting that, because obviously you were going through that phase in your life and you just needed somebody to acknowledge that, listen, you've got potential, and to really develop that potential, where then the potential then becomes the talent. That's when the potential has been confirmed.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it would have been fantastic to have an additional coach, because a coach's job is hard enough, but
yeah,
I think that's where you need additional coaches to identify, the niches almost, because you can get the overall coach, but you need the individual coaches to sort of, okay, how can we take it up to the next level? I think that's absolutely fundamental.
And so obviously you transitioned out of that, and then you would just say from that moment on, to moving the Marines, there was just you were aimless, you were kind of rudderless, like a boat kind of moving along. Would you say that's kind of?
Yeah, definitely. Just floating about, not really identifying with where I wanted to go, what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be. Because from most kids' understanding, it's all about the academics, all about, right, go to school, best you can in SATs, get as best you can in GCSEs, to then go on to A-levels, to then go and do a degree, to then maybe do a master's, to then maybe do a PhD. That's kind of the rough plan that everybody sets in life. I didn't have anyone to say, yeah, actually, it doesn't have to be quite like that. You don't necessarily have to focus purely on the academic. And I wasn't, other than swimming, particularly talented in any other sport, if I'm honest. But maybe I could have been, had I had, again, different influences on your life. Because I think a lot of what you do later in life is massively dictated by your experience you have within maybe the first 3 to 5 years of your life. Massively led by that period of time. And I didn't have that opportunity to go and play football with my dad, or go and to rugby with my dad, or whatever it might have been. It was kind of always like, I'm not complaining about it at all, because I'm grateful for how life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you never know what could have been had I found a different discipline to get a hold of. And I think that I definitely was lost after I gave up my swimming.
Yeah,
I was lost in school, and I knew all I couldn't wait for was just to finish school. That was my main thing. I hate school. I cannot wait till it's finished. I used to get bullied at school as well, but there's that part of going into survival mode.
Right.
I was trying to turn the joke around. Turn the joke around so that it took the fuel out of what these bullies were trying to do, and then actually it kind of made me survive through school, if you like.
Right.
Through school just from pure survival base, and I don't think that's necessarily a great thing to have to go through.
Right.
But I'm grateful for it, because it shaped me in other ways for the future, for much tougher challenges, which I've faced since, if that makes sense. So maybe had I not gone through that and learned to adapt then, perhaps I wouldn't have been able to adapt to certain different scenarios that have happened later down in life. So again, I'm not saying that bullying's ever a good thing, but in that moment in my life, I was just surviving to get out of school. I didn't know what was outside of school. I couldn't wait. And what I found was not really overly inspiring until I got to the point of 19 years old saying, now it needs drastic changing, because you're heading on a trajectory of nothingness.
Right. And it's interesting, like when you talk about the transition from, in terms of when you don't have those influencers in your life, if you look at child development and you look at kids and what shapes them for life, do you know what I mean? Like not having a lot of those things. Obviously being bullied, and especially, I definitely understand that. I kind of came from a similar myself, but when I look through a lot of these challenges that you think about being bullied and transitioning. So whenever you kind of when you're kind of going through that, do you know what I mean? And being a little bit more robust, do you know what I mean? But if you look at so you obviously, you fast forward, and you're obviously, you decide, listen, I want to change my life. You join the Marines. What was kind of behind that idea? Because considering where you were, what kind of brought that on?
So it's a point when I had the opportunity to go away and think, and I think this is a massive point, definitely pertinent to the situation we're going through now. Is this massive opportunity for people just to go, right, I'm not working, I'm not doing anything I normally do. I need time to think, or using this time to think, which I think is more key. But haven't had that time to think in Spain for those good few months there. I remembered a scenario where my grandfather was quite into war, quite into aeroplanes, and was a massive fan of the military. Not ridiculously in like a super enthusiast, but he was very interested in it, and would always be reading books, would always be going to different events that were kind of military related. Always took me to the different places such as Duxford or the air shows or whatever it might have been. On a trip to he felt that I needed to experience, and he was absolutely right. He felt that I needed to experience what the Second World War was all about. So he engineered a trip to northern France, so to see the Normandy landings. And not knowing it then at 13 years old, it really spurred me on to make that change at 19, or remember that experience that I had. And I met a guy on that trip called Jim Tuft, quite a cool name anyway. We started speaking, my grandfather and stuff like that, and we just built up this really, he was just such a friendly guy. He was a really lovely man. And he was a former Royal Marines commando. But he wasn't just any Royal Marines commander, he was a tank commander on D-Day. And he showed photos of him coming in his tank. And the stories he had were just phenomenal. We went to even see him a few months later. I think he lived in Rochester. So we went down to Rochester to visit him and just hear more of his stories. 13, 14, quite a big influence. And I kind of forgot that when I was lost. I didn't remember. I was like, I didn't even think about it. At 19 years old, I remember this time, and I just think, God, if I could just be like that person, if I could be any sort of that man stood for something, that he had values, he had meaning, he fought for something. I want to fight for something. I want to do something for me, and I want to do something in the security world, but I want to make a difference. I want to be of service. And I think that be of service piece is a massive part of it, and it's kind of filtered into what we do today. Definitely filtered into what we do today, but service was something that I wanted to feel. And I thought, actually, Royal Marines Commando, hardest basic, or arguably the hardest basic training in the world. It's not about getting that green beret at the end of it. It's not about getting those flashes on your arm. It's about what's under the green beret. It's what you fought for to get and become that person, that growth, that self-belief, that growth, increase in self-confidence, because that was something I was massively needing there. I was a really confident person, but maybe not as deep as perhaps what I am today, if that makes sense. I was kind of on the surface.
Can I just ask you about that, Anthony? So when you think about the confidence, and you said you were lacking that confidence, when you look at that, what was it in the Marines that really gave you? Was it the instructors? Was it just a different environment where it was value based, it was very focused, it was very intense? What would you say it was that gave you that confidence?
It was taking 32 weeks, looking at it and saying, right, if I can achieve 32 weeks of Royal Marines training, at the end of it, I become a Royal Marines commando. So it was looking at that value system, what you get at the end of it. I want to become X. And I think as you sort of go through training, it's not necessarily one point which increases your self-belief, but the further you get along the journey, because your goal is so clear, you know you're going to become a Royal Marines Commando. If you can make it through this time, you're going to be a Royal Marines Commando. I think there's a massive factor which I'll share in a second to that, but having a specific goal and then breaking that goal into each individual week, so mini goals to achieve that major goal, You know, 32. I looked at them at 32 individual weeks as opposed to 32 weeks complete. It was breaking it down into each week, week by week by week. I get through this week, then my self-belief grows. But of course, I didn't have the level of knowledge which I do today, the level of introspection which I do today, to obviously see that's what's happening. But was what was happening at the time. I was going through it, and I was like, okay, I feel better because I'm this much further past it. And there's certain tests throughout training. You will have experienced this in your own military training as well. There's certain tests which you go through, and once you pass them, you have a big sense of relief, a big like endorphin rush. And you know, I've achieved that. I'm now week 7 into training, only only like 18 more weeks to go. 25 more weeks to go.
Mm.
My maths is obviously, as you can see, they're pretty terrible. But yeah, 25 weeks to go. With 5 more weeks along it, 20 weeks to go, and counting down. But the factor which I think is most important to increasing self-belief is identifying, obviously, where you're going. You have to identify that. What is that meaning behind it? But applying a time limit on you achieving it, even though you may be massively fearful of, you know, all of the things why you couldn't achieve it, all of the things that you know, I don't think I can achieve it because of X. I don't think that's possible because of Y. All of those things may creep in, but it's trying to exclude that how piece and just saying, I'm going for this regardless, and I'm going to do it by X, because I guarantee you, if you don't achieve it by that time, you'll be pretty close to achieving it near that time, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. So the whole, and I think for those people just watching that, literally, so you've obviously got because to join the Royal Marines, obviously people would see the advertisement on TV that say it's a Royal Marines, it's a mindset. So as you kind of are in that environment, because it's not just the infantry, it's the elite, and obviously the SAS and the SBS have a large recruitment. The Marines, the paras, you know what I mean, they have probably the 2 of the highest rates in the British military. So when you look at it from that perspective, you guys obviously had to have an aura that you're special because you're coming through a different type of training.
Yeah, I would not discount the fact that you have to have a high degree of self-confidence in what you do, because if you're not able to then perform your job at the best level that you can. But that confidence you only achieve that confidence when you have a high degree of accountability for yourself.
Right.
So you have to do the basics. You need to know the basics throughout. You know, you have to know the early steps, the building blocks, the foundations, whatever you like to describe it as. You have to do those so well and repeatedly do those basics so well that you become so good at them that you have a high degree of belief that you can, whichever situation you face, you've got a number of different skills to be able to deal with what comes. Because in nothing is as obvious as perhaps what it seems on paper. And I think maybe there's another opportunity to maybe relate what we're going through here. Is it all seems absolutely clear what we need to do on paper now, but actually implementing it and making sure that the logistics are there to support whatever it might be, you know, it doesn't always go to plan. And I think there's a big part of that there. But that self-belief comes from doing the basics well. But equally, it also comes from being a part of that elite group. Not elitist, and I want to be absolutely specific about that. It's not an elitist mindset, it's an elite mindset thinking group. Is that you have the ability, because everybody's keeping themselves to a high degree of accountability, you then have responsibility to one another. And when you have that, you then have that opportunity to be able to pick each other up behind closed doors, so that when you go out on the field, you can outperform any of the opponents.
Yeah.
That's the idea behind it, is that you're so confident in not just yourself, but also the team. Can we all do this? Trust is a massive part of this.
Right.
Huge part of it. And it's one of the things which kind of wobbled with on exit as well. I was perhaps a little bit too trusting for people that hadn't, maybe didn't share a similar value system to me upon leaving the military, and that's fine. And I've learned my lesson there now, definitely. But definitely self-belief, self-confidence, it's all linked, you know. It all plays its different role, but everything is linked. Everything is together with regards to who you surround yourself with. We call it in the Marines, surround yourself with excellence. But then there are many other people, many other groups or people that talk about, you are your 5 people who you surround yourself with, if that makes sense.
Right. And it's interesting. I mean, because I know recently, obviously I watched that The Last Dance, and I was seeing the cohesion and the motivation even. And I think if you look about in terms of like the mindset, and I think that trying to get people to kind of go to kind of follow that belief, and there has to be a value system that has to exist. It has to, in order to achieve what you're actually setting out to achieve. So whenever you're kind of going through this, so obviously you then obviously leave the Marines. So take us on kind of the journey as you leave and just that transition, and kind of where you went to next, Anthony.
So upon leaving the military, just prior to leaving the military, actually, sort of 6 months leading up, you get your notice that you're going to leave. I stood in front of the medical board where you basically have to march into a room to be told that it's your time to leave the military. And it's a really bizarre feeling once someone, tells you, or a group of 3 people, very senior ranks, turn around and say, well, that's it, Mr. Thompson, that's you. Thank you, and finish. Handshake. And it's very bizarre because it almost seems like a very finite point, even though everything you've experienced in the last 10 years is just huge. This just seems like a very, how best to describe it? A very, small goodbye, if that makes sense. It's so part of my life. It was very much a case of, right, thanks very much, see you later. Oh, okay, I'll go and get on with the next part of my life.
Right.
The 6 months prior to that, I started, way before that, I started doing experience in project management. I did all my project management courses, change management, risk management, trying to prepare myself for what was to come next. What I wasn't prepared for was how much work I needed to put into translating my skill set that could have been applied or adopted into the corporate world, or any kind of world, really, post-military. So by the time I got to my exit point about April 2017, I put in 256 job applications. I had 10 interviews, 3 final interviews, all to be told, unfortunately, Ms. Thompson, we don't feel that you can bring any value to our organisation.
Right.
And upon exit, my self-confidence and self-belief at that point was very, very low. As a Marine, yes, you have to have a high degree of self-confidence and belief, but then when you step it up to the next level of being a leader, a pastoral care of 30 high-performing individuals in extreme scenarios, you also have to have a great deal of self-confidence. And each time I started to get chipped away at every rejection I got, rejection, all the way. Even though I was adapting and trying to change, I had 33 iterations of my CV. But no one, and this is why I think coaching and mentoring is so invaluable. You can't put a price on it, really, because I went through this process. My second child was being born literally 3 weeks after I was leaving. We bought a house with the money that I got from my medical discharge, only to find out the day after we moved in, a letter in the drawer which basically said this house was condemned due to a gas leak. The plumber inspects the boiler. The boiler is broken. Of course, it needs to be replaced. But the other news we received was, unfortunately, electrics in a house need to be replaced because they're so old. Nothing else now today will be compatible with how old these electrics are. So we're like, okay, this is not good. And when you start unveiling things in a house, more problems occur. RSJs are not set correctly. We ended up spending in the region of about £60,000, which we didn't have, by the way, at all. We didn't have it. Bearing in mind, I didn't have a job as well. On this house. So all of this worry is mounting up on me. I haven't got a job. I'm supposed to be a father of 2 children. I'm supposed to be a husband who's looking after the household. Currently, I'm failing on all 3 fronts. So about a month later, I sort of stuck my hand out and up really into the kind of charities group. I spoke to Officers Association, SAFA, Royal British Legion, Help for Heroes. And, I just basically said, I'm really, really buggers. How do I get out of this situation? I don't know what to do. I've got way too much month at the end of the money, and I don't really know what to do about it. How do I achieve this? I can't seem to get a job. No one wants me. I'm feeling pretty low at this point, even though I'm trying to keep my spirits up. The only thing that really probably got me through that was the fact that I was, that going back to this inspiration, which we've spoken about, Nick, this inspiration.
Absolutely.
My children, I need to fix this. I need to sort this out, because my children, if I don't do this, bearing in mind, I never had a father. And I think this is where it starts to play in, bearing in mind what you experienced as a child. One of my major objectives in life was to be a great father, to give my children that time, that love, and be their coaching, to coach my children, which I never experienced. I definitely missed that as a child. And therefore, I knew at that point that I needed to change myself in order to continue to be that coach for my children. And so that was the inspiration for me to go forward and just say, look, it's easy. I could have quit it all, in honesty. That's how bad it was. But I was like, no. Inspiration is going to keep me on the right track, and I'm going to get help, and I'm going to change my life, and I need to reinvent myself yet again. Age 30, don't really want to do that, but if I don't, then they suffer. And my wife suffered, who's been there as a massive support for the rest of my life, for all of my life. Well, all of my adult life, should I say. And that's when I managed to acquire a coach. Well, he's more a mentor, really. And he sat me down, and I just spoke to him for 3 hours, and it felt amazing. And then the next session, he basically said, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to translate your previous value into the corporate value, or what they believe. How do your values and what you believe you are translate into something of value to the corporate world? Bang. It was like a light bulb went on. And I was like, yeah, this is all I need to be told. This coaching, this mentoring. And we worked with each other for a number of weeks. And within 5 weeks, I had an interview at a major consulting firm in London. 8 weeks later, I was employed. And I was just like, wow, what a change. What a change in 8 weeks. 6 months, nothing. 8 weeks, I'm there. And that coaching and mentoring was absolutely invaluable for me, to just say, stop, assess what you're doing. How do you translate this value? Because you've got a lot. It's not about running around the battlefield with a gun. Of course it's not. It's about putting into place everything and translating all of your military experience, all of your strategic experience, all of your intelligence. I was in intelligence for a number of years. How does that apply to now? What value is that? And of course, suddenly once you start, again, peeling back the onion, you're like, it tastes really sweet towards the middle. I can do this. I can bring this value, and from there, the rest is kind of history, really.
And so, whenever, because obviously, from being in like Afghanistan and from coming through 10 years, that's quite a long time in the military. You know what I mean? And so, from taking all of that on and then seeing all the things that you had seen, so you built up quite a lot of, mental strength, resilience, motivation. When you entered the corporate world, because I suppose, as most people know in the corporate world, it's very different from a camaraderie perspective, in terms of people are more driven by the financial rewards that the corporate world brings. What would you say was the big difference there, in that transition, moving from like the Royal Marines all the way into the corporate world, and it totally changed mindset, going through hell with like your house and stuff? It's like a lot of stuff getting thrown at you, and it's just the planning. Take us through kind of your mental planning and how you went through that whole process.
If I'm honest, the first thing I did was identify my exit strategy. I needed to know when I was going to leave, thus creating an inverted goal, if you like. Okay, I need to achieve this by this time so that I can progress on to whatever it is that I want to do. I kind of had a step plan, and I think this is a major thing which many of us forget to do in life is set the steps. We're at the bottom of the stairs, and we look at the top and like, right, we almost see it as just one big step, and of course you can't it's going to be a hard climb. Why don't we just break it down like a set of stairs into individual steps, from one floor to the next? I went up, I was at the ground floor when I was at school, then I went up a flight of stairs and I got to level 1, after into the Marines, then level 2 by the time I finished, now where I am, level 3, and it's having that ability to break down the major obstacles into the smaller steps. And that for me was one of the things which I did. I knew from my time I wanted to own my own business.
Right.
And I said, within 5 years, I want to own my own business from the time I believe in. That was 2017. I'm way ahead of that schedule already. But that's the power of writing down your goals and writing them down where you can see them visibly, right, almost on a daily basis, I would say. In fact, I would recommend that to anyone. But obviously, that's what everyone else needs to do. You know, they need to find their way in doing it. But I knew that I wanted to leave within 18 months. I didn't want to be there any longer. It turned out for my first job, I was there for 12 months. But the next job I went into, I got an immediate promotion. And I knew within 18 months I wanted to achieve a promotion. I got it. And then the next one, I got another promotion within 6 months after that. And things happened very rapidly for me. I was like, there's something in this. There's something in the goal setting. And I really only started goal setting in 2016, properly goal setting. You know, writing it down, being very serious about it, writing timelines to things. 1 year, this is going to take me 1 year, this is going to take me 3 years, this is going to take me 5 years, this is going to take me 10 years. I've now even got goals which go out all the way to 30 years. But that's when that takes time. That's not something I was able to create, you know, overnight. That took about 18 months to be able to get to that level of goal setting. But having that very clear, defined objective to where you want to go, absolutely, on the dark days, you look at those and you're like, okay, that's where I'm going. This is what this is all for. I need to get to there, you know. And then the inspiration comes in that. You know, we've got a model. It's called the ICE model. I'll show it. You know, I'll show it on perhaps a different podcast. But very simply, it's an inverted traffic light. Your red light, amber light, and green light. Your red light is your inspiration. It's the thing, your why that you do it. For me, it's my children. And I'll go into inspiration a little bit more another time. Second one up, C, is courage or belief. You know, what skills do I need to acquire so that I believe that I can do this? And it kind of all merges into one there. And then green, or E, is enactment. You know, stepping out the front door, going to do it, going to get that thing done, turning up to the interview, doing the preparation, whatever it might be. It's the enactment, it's the action piece. And we've found that, Ben and I, you know, we've found that that's pretty much all we've ever done for our lives is follow this kind of strategy to achieve the goal. And of course, the goal sits just off the strategy after enactment piece. And for me, like, you know, really knowing where I want to go in life has been a major contributor to the relative successes that I've had today, if I'm honest. And actually, Nick, if I'm being absolutely honest, it is my honest belief that success isn't the end of something. Success is the journey. It's you're going through success. It's not, I need to get to this point to feel successful. If what you're doing is part of it, then that to me is success, because you're going on the journey. We always think that we need to get to a certain point to make us feel that we've achieved something, whereas actually, you know, that may take 5 years. At 2.5 years, if you haven't got that self-belief, if you haven't reflected, which is a whole other part of it, you haven't reflected and said, look what I've achieved, look where I've come from in the last 2.5 years. You know, thinking about when we're going through 32 weeks of training, trying to achieve Royal Marines Beret. You know, I've passed week 7, I've passed week 10, I've passed week 15. You know, having that step approach to it, to where you want to go, is fundamental. And that's one of the big things which definitely helped me in the corporate world to be able to apply that kind of military mindset, commander mindset, whatever you like to call it, which, by the way, I think everyone has. They just call it something else.
Right.
You know, having that mindset to say, yeah, I can achieve this because I know that I've got from here to here in whatever space of time. So reflection is crucial, but planning is fundamental. Planning and then reflection, you know, they go hand in glove.
So if you just want to include, just let us know the website where everybody can find you guys, Anthony.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. It's www.findyouredgecoaching.com, findyouredgecoaching.com, and also we're on Instagram, Tomo _2.0. That's THOMO _2.0, and also at Ben _Williams _CM for Instagram. you can find us there. Please reach out to us, and we'll definitely be able to help. Sure.
And also, everyone, to get Ben Williams a book on mindset, the Commando mindset. I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward. It's going to come out. I believe it's January. Is that correct, Anthony?
Yeah, it was supposed to be 14th of May this year, but unfortunately I got pushed right to January next year. But Commando Mindset is available for pre-order on Waterstones and Amazon. Just type in Commando Mindset. I think it's the first one that comes up.
Okay, and also, guys, if anybody wants any help from Anthony or Ben, you can actually go on. They have an online academy, and even just been them. They're doing a lot of stuff digitally, as he's actually mentioned. And any other types of questions you guys have, these guys would love. So any comments you have, just drop it in the section below, and we'll look forward to getting back to you.
Thanks very much, Nick.